how I do a low tide recon this week on Kayak Hacks.
Welcome back. If you're new to the channel, we cover kayak modifications, spin, and fly fishing. So poke that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. Now, let's get on with it.
So here's a little bit of a channel coming between these beds, and you can see some bait fish activity back in there right now. This must be what attracts them, and then later, when the bait gets up there into the weeds, that's where they get up next to that weed bed, and that's typically where we get them. Once all these oyster beds are covered up, they'll be back in here. Luckily, the bottom is pretty firm here, and I can walk around and totally scout this battlefield before the tide comes in and figure out how I'm going to fish it. So, given these oysters up here next to the bank, I think I'll throw a popping cork over there with a short leader on it, and that'll keep me from getting hung up in all these oysters. And then over here, I can throw some live bait or even an artificial and bounce it off the bottom coming back. Then here's another spot where I need to use a popping cork, and then I'm clear all the way over to that point where that bird is in terms of using anything I want. In terms of the channel, the reds are clearly going to come in right here. So I'll start fishing up in here, then I'll focus on back over there. I'm going to walk over there and see if I can see fiddler crabs and things like that, and that'll help me out a bit as well. No fiddler crabs, but you can see all this motion here. Those are all small shrimp jumping around. Okay, so here's the view looking out. You can get another perspective of the oyster beds here and where my casting lanes need to be to avoid getting hung up or losing gear. Check this little cove right here. You got some oyster beds back there. You got some sparse grass here, and that makes it easy for the reds to get back in here after the bait fish. It gets pretty thick, and it'll be pretty muddy because the grass is tall back there. You can typically walk where the grass is short. Interesting.
Now it's just a matter of waiting. They should be here a little bit after the oyster beds are covered with water. That's when it's deep enough for them to get up and get through. As I walked around, I saw plenty of shrimp, plenty of bait fish swimming around, even a couple crabs, but no fiddler crabs, which was interesting. Maybe I'll be lucky today, but even if I'm not, I can put this information to good use, especially since I took a bunch of pictures of it.
Ouch! The wind came up, got to revert to voiceover. I picked up a red on a long distance cast with my 9-foot rod up there to the left of that casting lane we discussed earlier. Now I'm glad I knew that the bottom here was firm enough to walk on, because that red wrapped the line around a couple of the oysters out there in the bed. So I had to walk out there, free the line, and now I can gently bring him in back to the boat to pull him back in. I have no idea what I'm talking about here. Probably something self-serving about how I got this fish because I had done that low tide recon. And this was probably some more BS along the same lines. I've got another nice red on here. This one I picked up over in the hot corner where they come around that point and then go back into that cove. And this is a good example of why you want to have a float on your anchor, because he got himself wrapped around some oyster beds and then went into the grass. And so what I had to do was cut loose my anchor, and it's going to float because I got the float on there, and then allow the red to pull me over I didn't even have to paddle to get over, and then I could pull him in once I got a little bit closer and had him out of the oysters and untangled from the grass. Once I got over close to the weed line, I had to get my paddle out and spin the boat a little bit. So I tightened up my drag a little bit, put my rod in the rod holder, and hope for the best against this marsh grass. You can see this red fighting to get back into the grass where he'd be a problem for me to recover. But I was able to work him out and eventually got him to the boat. What a great day and a great result of that recon.
So what's your perspective on doing a low tide recon? Do you get out and walk the battlefield like I'm doing right now to see what the situation is? Or is there a better way where you don't have to get your feet all muddy? If you got one, throw it in the comments below. I'd appreciate it. I think I'm going to walk around the shoreline here and look for rigs that I've lost over the last couple of years.